and Brittany, our digital strategists, you're going to hear from in just a few minutes. But for the agenda, and this is to get to that critical part I wanted to talk about, I did want to focus on this theme of, and excuse me for being a little preoccupied, I'm letting people still in the waiting room. Zoom now requires that for a security point of view. Donor-driven, donor-centric fundraising, and it's really a different philosophy. I'm going to spend a little bit of time highlighting the key elements of what's different about being donor-driven versus organization-driven. And draw some analogies there and really ask each of you, whether we've got board members, staff members, or volunteers on this morning's webinar, to reflect back and say, gee, what kind of organization are we? Because 2020, 2021 in particular may be a great time to think about transitioning from being organization-driven to being donor-driven. The distinction between those two, I'm going to give you a lot more content about in just a minute so you can really understand, oh, well, we're already donor-driven based on what John Curtis is saying, or, oh, we've never thought about, if you will, philanthropy and development in that regard. So that's some of the content this morning. Brittany's then going to kick in here and talk about the multiple channels, multiple messages, and then finishes up probably by about 1 to maybe 1:05 as far as our time goes with content, and then open it up to your questions with a hard stop of 1:15 today. Now, along the way, if something pops up, I tend to talk fast, as you've noticed. If you've got an immediate question, feel free to type it in the chat window. I'll be monitoring that and potentially interrupting, if you will, in the content of the program to respond to an intermediate question. But we do have Q&A built in at the very end, along with this being recorded again, and the slides available via a study guide that Katie had already distributed. So that's our agenda and where we're headed. I want to go ahead and get into the content in this area here and talk about successful donor-driven and this whole idea of a culture of philanthropy. And just to discuss this a little bit, as Katie had mentioned and I had discussed in a prior webinar, the culture in general it's kind of an invisible element of your nonprofit. How does it feel to work here? How does it feel to be a part of this organization? That's culture in general. It's attitudes, it's perceptions, it's values, it's experiences, it's relationships. It's all that thing that, you know, if we all got in a plane and flew to Ecuador and walked around downtown cities in Ecuador, we would immediately see a difference in culture. If we got on that same plane and flew to Thailand, I mean, the cultural differences in countries are quite obvious: language, food, dress, and so on and so forth. Cultural differences within nonprofits are much more subtle, of course, but nevertheless can be very powerful. So it's important from an overall organizational development point of view, we believe, is to kind of keep your finger on the pulse of the culture of your organization, just to make it a productive and enjoyable place to work. Now, more specifically, a culture of philanthropy means within your nonprofit, even if there's just you and 2 staff members, or you and 32 staff members, it's that culture of philanthropy means everyone has a role to play in fundraising. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody asks for money, and that's really kind of bottom of the list, crazy as that may sound when it comes to philanthropy, asking for money. But it does mean a volunteer, a board member, a brand new staff member, an administrative assistant at the front desk, the executive director in his or her office, all can answer simply the question, what is your role when it comes to philanthropy in your organization? If you're talking to the development director, he or she should be able to articulate that pretty clearly. But if you're asking a board member, it's important in a culture of philanthropy, and this may set the stage for some future training for you, the board member needs to understand their role. I don't ask people for money, but I am a friend raiser, and I constantly am a champion and an advocate for our nonprofit in the community or whatever. So a culture of philanthropy simply means what it feels like in our little nonprofit is that among many things, everyone understands their role in, because money is oxygen. You can't live without it. And so everybody needs to have a role to play. And for those of you that have maybe transitioned from, we didn't have any formalized development function in place or person, to finally hiring your first development director, there may be that sense of relief of, oh, now we don't have to worry about that any longer because we've hired him to do that. We've hired her to do that. And again, I would say not productive at all. The good development person needs to very, very quickly, in my opinion, say to the whole group, I'm here to help drive the development process. And as part of that, I'm going to help teach each of you your role in philanthropy, so it doesn't sit on one person's plate. Everybody has a role to play when it comes to being donor driven. So organization centric may seem obvious. It's out there. It's hard to see maybe what I would call the challenge here, not the criticism of it, but I'm going to use in the next few minutes just a simplistic analogy that hopefully won't offend anybody, but I think the metaphors of dating relationships can be used well in what we're going to be talking about. So here we are in an example. You've met somebody online in a dating site. You're cautious. You're going to be virtual initially, and or you're going to meet them for a cup of coffee at a Starbucks in Central Florida somewhere, and they spend the entire time together telling you about them. The whole hour, all he does is talk about himself. All right. And so now you leave your virtual or your in-person meeting and you call your best friend and check in. Well, what was it like? Well, I don't know. They just went on and on about themselves, never even asked me anything about what I do. What would you feel? What would you think? You know, I know that's overly simplistic, but in this day and age, it's difficult sometimes, and it's hard to develop the discipline to not say, this is what we do, this is how wonderful we are, here's all the children's that we're impacting, here are the art classes that we offer, here's how we engage seniors in our arts classes, in our cultural organization, this is how we teach history in Seminole County, this is, of course, you know, our programs are world-class. It's all that marketing language that is more and more problematic, I believe, when it comes to fundraising. And let's just talk a little bit more about that. So it is all about you. And it's hard to be heard above. I mean, you've got in Central Florida, a large and rapidly growing population. There's lots of nonprofits. Just look at this morning. We've got 25 representatives from arts and cultural and history organizations, and there are hundreds out there. And Katie would know in her role in United Arts how many they serve or reach out to or contact on a regular basis. So there's noise in the marketplace. How do you get heard above that? And then this is an important element, a real critical one, back to the skepticism of that first date where they talked all about themselves. Is there such skepticism? You all know this on a regular basis. It happens to everybody in this modern digital world. You get an unsolicited email about a wonderful new product or service, or you fill in the blank. And of course, the natural response is not, oh, that's wonderful, I want to pursue that and buy one of those. It's like, yeah, click, delete. Or maybe if it interests you a little bit further, you go do some investigation. There's such skepticism because of, frankly, scams and growing sophistication in the marketplace as well. So don't hear me saying it's bad or wrong to be able to talk about the difference that you're making, the impact that you're having, but don't let it drive your philosophy of fundraising. Because again, there's a diminishing return, and some of you are on this call perhaps because you've heard that from individuals, or you're searching for a new way to do it. But again, one way to do it, being organization centric. The second way to do it, of course, the model that we're advocating here, is taking the time to reversing that relationship in our date. We're on the phone, we're digital. For our Zoom call, we're at Starbucks, and you know, that's enough about me. Tell me more about you. And so part of what donor-centric is about is taking the time to set aside wanting to naturally be effusive and excited about the various things you're doing in your arts organization, is to say, well, tell me about you. What are your interests? And begin to get to know that person in a genuine way. You're looking at a long-term relationship. That's what we're building towards. And we're really trying to make sure we move giving away from just a single transaction to an ongoing investment in relationships. So donor-centric is really about working on helping the donor talk about their personal values. I value the arts. I love programs with kids. I really see the benefit that comes to bringing history out and making it alive about Central Florida, because so many people have moved here and they don't know our history. They don't know the background. They don't know about you fill in the blank or whatever it may be. Getting to know their personal values. Maybe it's not so much that you're a faith-based organization, but maybe there's a calling that they have to give back. And so it's about helping them tap into that and frankly, legitimizing you in their eyes as a legitimate place to give money to. So it's really about understanding what they value, what's important, what are their philanthropic goals. And you may even find and have run into a situation where you've got a donor who gives because that's what our family does. My dad taught, my grandmother taught, whoever we do this, we regularly look around in the community for what can we do to make a difference in our community. It's just part of who we are as a family. So your goal here is to get to know them along these lines and try to understand what's important to the donor. That's what donor-centric is about. And that really sets the stage for what we're trying to do with year-end giving, because some of you may wonder, and you're going to hear from Brittany in just a minute, well, how do you do that when you're sending somebody a letter or an email? How do you make it from their perspective? And of course, that's the trick and the strategies that you'll be hearing about in just a few minutes. But back to that dating analogy before I move on, we're not just looking at a one-time date, we're looking to find a donor who is going to get to know you, you're going to get to know them, you're going to date over a period of time, using the analogy, of course, you're going to eventually go steady and you want them to get married to you. Now, that may be hard to imagine because back to money is oxygen, and some of you are thinking about, we just need to keep the lights on around here. I can't think about planned giving. But keep in mind, as you sow the seeds, build a larger and larger pool of donors that have fallen in love with your mission and have been engaged deeply into your mission. They also become the folks that may write you a planned gift right into their will, and you get a large amount of money. And that may be a year down the road. It may be 10 years down the road, but I'm assuming many of you are on this call this morning because you plan to have your nonprofit. You may not be there the whole time, but have your nonprofit around ad infinitum, making a difference in the quality of life in Central Florida. So that's donor-centric, earning the right, which is very important, back to that dating analogy. And really, and this is the departure from organization-centric to donor-centric, and that is looking at not just a one-time transaction, but an ongoing investment, and speaking in terms of investment. And maybe even that colors the language of your marketing piece, of your email or series of emails that Brittany will talk about, the letter that's sent out. We talk about investments and not gifts, and think of it in those terms as well. So donor-centric is writing all the copy from, you told us this, we heard from you, you let us know this is important, we listened to you. It's about writing that copy from that perspective, talking about the organization. You know, we understand that you really value making a change in the lives of young people today, whatever it may be. And again, you're going to get some great in-depth content from Brittany in just a moment on that. And then personalizing and speaking as if, because this is that also very common strategy. We want to have one perfect letter, our year-end appeal letter. Everybody touches it. We edit it ad infinitum, and now we've got our one perfect letter. And I would go, if especially your past year-end campaigns haven't worked, don't write one letter, write 10, depending on the audience, depending on what you may know about the recipient, that are focused, that are tailored and customized. It's mass customization is the term I heard years ago that I really like here. Personalizes if you know the person. So again, just to finish up my portion here before we move on, it's really about looking at a different angle, a different approach, coloring outside the lines, fresh new perspective. And obviously this girl's face is a great example because we're arts organizations. You can use images like this, if you will. So don't hesitate to think outside the lines in this regard. Creative and fresh approach. And the part that I'll finish up on, and this is for many of you on the call this morning, I realize you're likely staff or volunteers or board, But I really, really urge you to think about, I know you may feel like, oh gosh, here we are in almost at the end of the year anyway. How do I find time? But engage donors. And again, reaching out to donors in advance, 3 to 5, 5 to 7, 8 to 10 donors, invite them to a virtual focus group, send them your first draft of your year-end appeal and get their input, making sure they understand you're not going to also ask them for money. You genuinely need their advice. But keep in mind, if they're already exercising their giving muscle, as we call it, they're writing you a check annually, they've been giving to you over the past 5 years, they, more than anybody, can answer the question, why would I give to you in the first place? Because they're giving to you. So don't underestimate the power of at least asking informally, or maybe launching in 2021, you've got a campaign planned. You may want to look at a campaign cabinet comprised of existing donors who help shape and mold and tweak your message. Donors love, remember, I'm giving to you. I love what you do. You make a difference in the life of my grandchild or my mother or whatever. I'm already invested in you anyway. I would love to tell you what I think about you and why I have fallen in love with you and show you how to get others to fall in love with you. So again, don't hesitate, if you will, to engage all the normal people you're supposed to ask when it comes to campaign planning, but donors in particular. So on that note, Brittany, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to turn it over to you. If there's any immediate questions, as I said at the beginning, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and type that into the chat window right now. Katie, Brittany, for either of you, anything in particular here, or 25 minutes into the hour? Brittany, I've talked too much already. Let me be quiet and introduce Brittany. She won't say a lot about herself, but she's hugely, greatly talented. We call her a digital strategist, among many things. And I think what you're going to hear from her in the next few minutes is going to be new and innovative and unique. And at that note, I'll turn it over to Brittany. It is all yours.
Cool. Hello, everybody. I'm Brittany Altman. I will talk a little bit about myself just in case any questions come in. Feeling a little spunky today. I'm actually a UCF alumna, lived in Central Florida for about 4 years. I live in Colorado, just outside of Boulder currently. I'm still not used to the cold, which is why I'm bundled up in a jacket. And I still drink iced coffee every day, even though I live in the cold. But I think we'll be all right because I just found a mini heater right here on the floor in this office space. So hello, everybody. I'm super excited to get going and talk to you. I'm going to share my screen. And we are going to kick this off. Let's see. Okay. I'm assuming everybody, John, give me a yes if you can see my screen like full. Perfect.
Yep.
All right, so we're going to jump into section 2 of 3 of this presentation. John went over a great amount about the difference between organization-centric and donor-centric. Most of the stuff I'll be talking, basically everything I'll be talking about is also donor-centric content. We're going to first cover leveraging multiple channels and multiple messages. So how can we use various communication channels to both maximize our impact and create a buzz that results in new dollars from new donors? So to understand this, what does leveraging multiple channels mean? Well, it refers to interacting with clients using a combination of indirect and direct communication channels and enabling clients to take action using the channel of their choice. So what does that look like? Well, when you look at multi-channel marketing, you're using all these channels and allowing people to find you through the channel of their choice and interact with you through the channel of their choice. So you're probably using social media. I'm sure you have a website. A lot of nonprofits use direct mail campaigns, email campaigns. Some with higher budgets might do radio and television ads. But you're really utilizing these channels to hit multiple different types of audiences. And with multiple messaging, it's using a series of different messaging across those channels and allowing that messaging to resonate with the different types of audiences that you're wanting to reach. So when you look at what that might mean, let's say that we have 2 audience groups here, so a potential donor and a current donor. I might have a Facebook ad a direct mail, and an email that I actually tailor different to, depending on what audience that I talk to. One is going to be about, hey, get involved, become a donor. Like, here is a really good story that you might like. And then a current donor might be more about like the statistics that you guys have done as a company because of current donors. It could be any sort of different type of content, but it's really having that content tailored toward the different audiences. And we'll talk about different audiences in a bit. So I know what you're probably thinking. That sounds like a lot of work. You're talking about multiple channels, multiple messaging, like, okay, that's a little bit wild. But what I want to talk about is how can we use strategies to build a multi-channel, multi-message year-end giving campaign and make it easier to build, quicker to build, and more efficient. So some of these how-tos, determine what channels you're going to use. Some really successful channels that work for year-end campaigns is a mixture of email, direct mail, social media, whether it's free posts or if you do decide to use a paid campaign budget, and a landing page. Or if you don't have a landing page, which I'll talk about what a landing page is in a bit, you can have just a page on your website. So why do we want to look at different channels? Well, as you can see, according to this global trends report, depending on the age group that you're targeting to, they have different ways that they prefer to give, and they also have different ways that they're inspired by. So with the first two age groups, with millennials and Gen X's, they're more inspired by social media, but the baby boomer population is more inspired by email. But as you can see, all four of the things listed there are what I just suggested on the slide before. So it is important to use a mixture of channels. Map out how the channels will work together. So let me show you some of the mapping that I've done. So let's say I have an email and I've sent out an email. The person who clicks that email and clicks on like the call to action that you have in email is going to go to a landing page, and then they're going to make a donation off of that landing page. So now you've got email landing page working together. If I'm using social media, I might donate directly through social media. If you're using Facebook's giving features, I might click to your landing page and then make the donation that way. And if I'm using direct mail, I might send my donation in, or I might go to the landing page and make a donation that way. But either way, my channels are working together to really have multiple different touch points for my donors to donate. Once you have an understanding of what channels you would like to use, start to define your audience. Some organizations might have this figured out and others might not, but this could be a great 3-hour exercise to do with different people in your organization. And really kind of understand who are the different audiences that you want to define, particularly for this new year, for this year-end campaign. You saw this earlier. If we're going to break it out between a campaign for current donors and a campaign for potential donors, but it doesn't have to be that way. Let's say that you are an organization that works with like homeless vets or homeless youth. You might have a group of donors who are more interested in helping out homeless youth and donors who are more interested in helping out homeless vets. And for an arts organization, you might have a set of donors who are more interested in working with youth programs, youth artistic programs, and you might also be catering towards adults and have people who are more interested in helping adult programs. But you could also break it up in a monetary standpoint, as far as if you want to go crazy and have 3 different audience groups for this campaign, a more general audience, and then donors who have donated less than X, so your lower end donors, and your really high end donors who have donated more than X might have different messaging. Once you know what kind of audiences to reach out to, start to map out the things that characterize those audiences. And this is a really great exercise if you haven't done it already, but really just get a 4 matrix grid and understand it could be the demographics, their goals, their behaviors, the donation habits, the channels that they're likely to use, but really start to define each audience group and understand what kind of messaging might resonate more with them because I'm understanding their goals and behaviors. Once you understand the audiences, start to think about the different lists. So I'm talking about the actual, like the work here of creating those lists for each audience. And some places where you might get lists from is from your own data. So from your donor CRM, email lists, you might pull some website traffic information and understand page followers from Facebook, but really take that data and break it into the different lists. Use Facebook's data, especially if you're doing paid campaigns. They have tons of information on user demographics, people who like certain pages, people with interests. There's a wealth of knowledge from Facebook's data. And of course, if you're using a third party or some sort of purchase list, if that's the route that you would like to go, then again, just start to figure out who is going into what audience and breaking the lists up that way. So I'm going to go into a little bit of, might be a confusing area, but here it goes. Determine what channels will have unique messaging per audience and how many total pieces of content needs to be made for each channel. So let's break down what that looks like. I'm going to go with an email, direct mail, social media, and landing page for my year-end campaign. I've already agreed to those channels. But you have to remember that you have to send out multiple messaging for each channel throughout that campaign. So for example, I might send out 3 emails, my introductory email announcing the campaign, my email 3 days before the last day of giving, and my email the last day of giving. I might do one mail, I might do one postcard at the end. Social media posts will probably go throughout. If it's a paid campaign, I might have 3 different types of posts. And then I'll probably have one landing page for the entire duration of the campaign. But then I also have different audience groups. So if I'm going with my example earlier where I have the current donor and the potential donor, well, you're talking about 6 emails, potentially 1 to 2 mailers if I want to do a different mail per audience, 6 Facebook posts at minimum, and potentially 1 to 2 landing pages if I, again, want to break up per audience. And I know that sounds kind of overwhelming, but I want you to remember that your goal is to templatize this content so that you can use the same template across audience groups. So this 6 email, 6 post, 1 to 2 mail and landing page actually turns into 3 templates total, 1 template, 3 templates, 1 template. And what I mean by that is that the overall structure of that first email that you send out should be very structured the same. You're just changing out the photos and the text to match what audience groups that you decide to go to. Maybe not even the photos, maybe just the text, but you can templatize it and make it easy so that you know what's going to be structured no matter what type of audience you're working with. Some ways to templatize the content is to start with a list of content ideas. What type of content do we either know exists or we know we can create within this short time frame? We're already at November 6th, and we got to get this year-end campaign going. What kind of content ideas can we get figured out? Start with the landing page. So when I say landing page, what I'm referring to is just one simple page that's dedicated to this year-end campaign that has a link for the donation button on it, preferably spread out across the page. Some organizations might not have web capabilities and staff might not have web capabilities for freelance. So you might just send them to the donation web page that you have on your current website. That's totally okay. But if you want to do a landing page, they can be really great and effective. When you're planning the landing page, draw out the actual page with pencil and paper and kind of wireframe the section out, the page out, to understand the different sections that are going to be used on that page. And again, because we're templatizing it, if you do decide to use 2 landing pages one per audience, it's going to be the same template. And as I said earlier, display that call to action, display that donation button throughout the page, and don't bombard people with multiple calls to actions for this year-end campaign. Don't ask them to volunteer and donate and join your mailing list and like your Facebook page. Try to stick to the main goal of the year-end campaign, which is bringing in year-end donations. So if you look at templatizing that content, this is an example. I'm using the same graphic. This could be a header image for my email, but I'm tailoring that content to different audience groups. Will you consider continuing your support? A current donor, your corporation can make an impact. A business donor or some sort of corporation type business account, make an impact, become a donor by giving today, become a donor, a potential donor. And remember, the type of content that's going inside should be the same across each audiences. Photo, paragraph of text. You're just swapping out those copy and visuals to better suit the audiences. And when it comes to actually building this stuff out, use drag and drop programs to help quick builds. What I mean by that, Unbounce is a really great tool for making landing pages. It's a drag and drop program. I believe they have nonprofit discounts. I know they were doing it for COVID relief. They were doing actually like a pretty decent discount. I don't know if they're still doing that. MailChimp and Constant Contact for emails. I'm sure most, if not all of you, are using at least one of these or another sort of email CRM, email builder, but they're also drag and drop. Canva for social media graphics. They have a lot of pre-built graphics, but also a really easy editor to use if you don't have graphic design staff or freelance capabilities or budget. GraphicRiver.net or CreativeMarket.com has a lot of really great starter postcard templates, starter brochure templates that make it easy to knock out print in a faster time frame. Or of course, you can work and just give the strategy to a freelancer and hire him or her to build out the assets if budget and time allows for. So that completes section 2. I am going to roll right into section 3, and then we can have any questions or conversation points afterwards. So we've talked about how can I leverage multiple channels and multiple messaging for my campaign? What would it kind of look like to build those channels out, to build the different messaging out? Now I want to talk about how we can build a buzz to create that strong year-end push. I've got my campaign. What kind of content should I use to kind of cut through all the noise that's happening at this year-end stuff? So it's important to remember that donors get involved with nonprofits over the holidays for 4 main reasons. Hold on. My PowerPoint is doing something funky. Okay, cool. We're good to go. To be happier by helping others. It's the holidays. I want to feel happier. It's been kind of a crazy election. It's been kind of a crazy year with COVID. Like, I need some happy points. Let's give some donations for the end of the year. I want to feel good about myself by making a difference. I want to know that I'm helping others, especially in this time of need. I want to be connected to something positive. And lastly, I want to take advantage of tax deductions. That tax bill is going to come next year and it's going to be large. How can I give my money away and kind of turn down my burden? So how can we cut through the holiday noise and inspire donors to donate to your year-end giving campaign? Well, first, the big C, have inspiring content. Inspiring content is things that is impactful, meaningful, heart-bending, personal, shareable, actionable. It's all these really great words that make me want to share the content and inspires me to donate. Stories and testimonials. These are really the most effective way to have a donor understand the true impact of their gift. Have the story come directly from those who you have impacted. So like John said about donors, or about donor-centric content, you want that story to come from the person that you are inspiring, that the donor is going to want to hear from. What is going on? Showcase these in text and video format, especially video format. That can be a very popular medium to use. And choose stories or testimonials based on the audience that they will be serving. So again, if you've got one of your audiences for people who are interested in youth and one who's interested in adult programs, then cater the audience accordingly, or cater the content accordingly. Have your asks come directly from those who you have impacted. So have it come from a real person who has or will be receiving your assistance. A good example of this is new shoes will allow me to walk to school safely. Will you consider donating to my campaign? And of course, if you're attaching photos, that's going to be really a great way to make that ask seem more real, especially if you're not using stock photos like I am right here on the slide. Use graphs that prove your impact. Your organization has been working really hard to make an impact in the community and the areas that you serve. Use graphs and statistics to prove that. Connect the dots between the current needs statistics in your area and in those who you're serving, and how a donor's gift will impact those numbers, will improve those numbers, will decrease those numbers. Whatever it is that you're trying to do, use those statistics and show your proof. As I mentioned a couple slides ago, video is the most effective form of media. And some ways that you can use video in your campaign is to include a kickoff video on the landing page, post it on your Facebook, include it in your first email announcing campaign. And it doesn't have to be any crazy production, just something that's announcing the campaign and possibly coming from the people that you're looking to help with this year-end campaign. And use videos to showcase testimonials and stories. Put them on your landing page, use them throughout social media. And as you are going through the campaign, especially if you're trying to hit a target, email or post campaign update videos. You're probably better off posting these because we don't want to bombard people with too many emails, but let people know how your campaign is doing. Just put up a quick 1 or 2 minute talk from somebody who's influential in your organization or somebody that you're serving. And hey, this is where we're at. Help us reach this goal. Make it easy. Make it easy for people to give you money. Offer multiple ways to give so donors can choose their preference. Online on your landing page. So if you've created a landing page, throw those donation buttons on, put the form on, send them to PayPal, whatever you're doing for your financial strategy, place it and sprinkle it through that landing page. Or if you're using a page on your website or just sending them to the online donation page that exists, again, make it easy to give money. Use Facebook fundraising. If you're not registered, register at socialimpact.facebook.com and allow people to give through Facebook. Set up text to donate. And include mail-in contributions and envelope with your direct mail campaigns. But again, as I mentioned earlier, different age groups have different ways that they want to give. So let them give in the way that they prefer. Use predetermined donation tiers. So what that means is the study once found that using predetermined tiers can lead to a 12% increase in average donations. John, you had a really good point that you've talked to me about with predetermined donation tiers.
Thank you for allowing me to interject that here. There's a phenomenon called acquiescence. Look it up, Google it. It's a concept out of statistics having to do with threats to validity, but acquiescence, as the term in its root word acquiesce, implies, given a Likert scale of strongly disagree to strongly agree, the reality is, and I'm more likely to go with the first thing that I come to, strongly disagree, you fill in the blank. When I see this, the vast majority of the time in giving appeals, whether they're online, donate buttons, letters, postcards, is you start with a low number. First of all, for many, many nonprofits, you think too less of yourself. For many, many nonprofits, you're looking at $490 billion given philanthropically last year in the US, 11 billion given by Floridians, and the average gift size, and by the way, most of the research coming from the Community Foundation of Central Florida shows nearly $1 billion given in Central Florida with the average gift size of $3,500. So please don't trust me, don't believe me, back to multiple letters, multiple appeals, and multiple numbers. So have one appeal that starts with $1,000 and then 500 and then 250 and down, if you will. Have another one that starts at $5 and works its way up to 1,000. Put one in there just to be bold in your third format that starts with $10,000 to let people know, oh, they're asking for bigger gifts. Talking to a philanthropist, a woman in another city, actually in South Carolina, not too long ago, and she was talking to an audience of executive directors and board members, and, well, you know, we gave you $100,000 and we gave you X, and this one woman stood up kind of sheepishly and said, how come you only gave us $1,000? And she said, because that's all you asked for. And so don't hear me simply saying by changing the numbers on your appeal letter, you're immediately going to get more money, but don't limit yourself. So by just one example of what you're seeing on the screen that Brittany is talking about, this starts with $1,000 as the first gift. The acquiescence to the higher number is what we're trying to get to. And like I say, don't trust me, try 2 or 3 or 4 versions of this. And then after your year-end campaign is over with, evaluate which letter and which format, when it came to dollar amounts, brought in the most amount of dollars. The last thing is to make sure on your website and your Donate Now button, don't do the same thing on your website, or certainly leave a blank for somebody to type in a number. Become more sophisticated, and Brittany can help you with that as well, and setting that up or modifying your website. But make it easy for people to give you larger gifts. We have $3,500 on average gift size of people in Central Florida giving, and you're getting $35 gifts. What's the disconnect? So acquiescence is the concept. Thank you, Brittany, for letting me babble about that a little bit. But it is true, it's real, it's valid, and it does impact giving. Okay, Brittany, it's all yours. Can you hear me now, Brittany? Brittany, can you hear me now? Hello?
Sorry, my internet is going in and out. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Keep on going. You're fine. I can put up the PowerPoint if you need me to pick up on that slide.
I think we're good. Can you see my, okay, hold on, sorry. My internet was going out. Okay, can you see my screen again?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I'm gonna keep going and assume that you can hear me. Thanks, John, for that. I always forget that term that you use. And that sounds like a really good A/B test to use with figuring out if we want to start with a higher budget and seeing the difference with starting a higher number versus the lower number.
Okay. And by the way, Brittany, if I may, excuse me, one last one. If you don't believe
kind of pick off
this issue, ask your donors. Back to engaging your donors. You know, we've got this piece that lays it out this way. We got that piece that lays it out this way. Ask what donors think about laying out the dollar amounts and providing different levels of giving. See what they say about that versus a sheepish board member who says, well, we don't want to offend people. Let's not ask them for $1,000. Don't listen to that board member out of all respect. Ask them for $1,000. Ask them for 10,000. So go ahead. Anyway.
Cool.
Yeah.
And provide a description for what each amount is going to accomplish. This is really cool because it really puts that amount of money and connects it to the ask, and it connects it to the impact of what your organization is doing with their money. And offer one-time or monthly donating options. A lot of the donation forms and PayPal and whatever you're using, most of them make it pretty easy to have just a checkbox to set up all monthly donating options, and give that to them. Reinforce your messaging. So have the largest campaign push be towards the end, the last few days of the year. So you send out that initial campaign announcement, and then send an update reminder every 5 to 7 days until the last few days of the year, depending on when you are sending out the first initial campaign. And then during those last few days of the year, an email should be sent every 1 to 2 days. And why? Because 33% of all online gifts are given in December. And 10%, and this is a study found by Network for Good, of all donations came on the last 3 days of the year, 10% of the entire annual donations. So utilize those last few days of the year in your campaign. If you're doing social media ads, run them throughout the entire duration of the campaign. So keep them on, run them throughout the duration of the campaign, but increase your budget and the reach for the last few days of the year. Spend the money, again, toward the days where most donations are likely to happen. And if you're doing a direct mail campaign, send the direct mail letter to donors at the beginning of the campaign. And if budget allows so, send a follow-up postcard during the last few days to those who have not yet donated. And use some sort of countdown approach to build the anticipation and create that sense of urgency. Because again, we want to reinforce the message of how important it is to give at the end of the year to your organization. And post those updates of the fundraising progress, as I mentioned earlier, to inspire people to contribute towards finishing that goal. And another fun thing you can do is you can give donors an easy way to share some sort of like I donated to this campaign update on their social media page. A lot of website or landing page builders will allow you to put some sort of like share this icon. And once you submit them to the page that's the thank you page for their donation, promote them to share it. Include share buttons. And tag and thank donors on social media if appropriate and if you have permission to create more of a buzz. And finally, for your actual website, use a pop-up or slide if you have like a slideshow on your website to promote the campaign. And finally, personalize. Personalizing your appeal emphasizes how highly you value your donors. Direct mail is the most effective way to provide a personal touch with your ask. Address users by their first name or by their preferred salutation. And recognize your donors' past involvement with your previous campaigns, especially if you're breaking it up between current donors and potential donors, higher end donors, monetary donors versus lower end monetary donors. And speak to them about how you can directly help make your mission possible. And finally, send handwritten thank you notes. And this is a really great way to enlist your board's help with this one because it might take a lot of time if you get a lot of donations, if you have a successful campaign. So that is it from me.
Very good. Thank you, Brittany. I'm going to share my screen and just go back to one quick thing here. Open it up to questions. 3 key areas that we tried to cover. I obviously highlighted this donor-centric model. Love to talk further about that. If you have questions, remember, none of the ways you're using to raise money right now are bad or wrong if they're actually raising money. We're simply suggesting the donor-centric be the underpinning, the underlying philosophy of all of those strategies, especially and including your year-end appeal. Brittany obviously has just covered Roman numeral 2 and 3 there that you see on the screen. So we'd like to open it up now. We're right on schedule where we need to be. Our hard stop is 1:15, but Q&A, anything anybody would like to ask, I'd love to hear from you now. And again, feel free. I'm going to unmute everyone, and you can chime in, or you can just type in, if you will, in the chat window what you'd like to ask us. So questions or comments, and Katie, just put you on the spot because you live in this world regularly and participate and attend so much training. Was there a takeaway? Was there something new that you just like to say, gee, after all is said and done and in a whirlwind hour, John, Brittany, what I did get most is X. Is there anything that jumps to your mind?
For me, I think my takeaway was the personalization. And, when you say that, especially for, there are varying sizes of organizations on this call. Some have multiple people in their development staff. Some people have no development staff and they're only an executive director of their organization. And so time spent in fundraising can vary. And so when you hear personalization, I think that gets a little scary and time consuming in someone's head. But I think you both did such a great job of talking about templating and ways to make that accessible to people. So that's something I'm going to be taking away from my organization and trying to make sure that we implement at the end of this year. So that was my main takeaway.
Yeah, the obvious thing, excuse me, Katie, for stating the obvious. Remember, United Arts is an arts organization, and they are in the business of raising money on a regular basis, just like everybody else on this call. So thank you, Katie.
Yes.
So questions, comments, you can unmute yourself if you want to speak it or type it in the chat window. We'd love to hear questions, comments. I see hands going up, so please go ahead. Mary Ann, perhaps you go first.
Okay, great. Oh, this is so amazing and so right on time, because our virtual event is coming up next weekend. And 2 days I've been getting ready to send a letter out to donors to say, we can add your 30-second commercial on our film festival. So and I've been playing around with how do I do that? So we have an invite page, and I was going to put a block on Constant Contact and say, so we're asking, I was going to beg for support, but now I have some little things to ask to really put in that messaging. How soon will we get this video, this recording?
Great question. Yeah.
I want to include something on my letter that I'm putting together today. So that's perfect timing, because we haven't asked. We've been around 8 years and we never asked. United Arts has given us and supported us. And someone said to me, Raphael or Matt said to me, or Michael, you gotta ask. And so that's what I'm getting ready to do. So it's perfect timing.
Good for you. Yeah, don't be afraid to do that. On the technical side, Zoom, immediately when this call ends, Zoom will start processing the data. I get a link sent. I put that up as a YouTube video because it's easy to share and not data intensive. It's not a big file. Probably within a couple hours, or certainly before the weekend, we'll have that link. Katie, is that fair to say? We'll have that link back out to you. I'm just delighted to know you see something of value. You actually want to see the video. One other thing to quickly mention, by the way, and this gets into that whole philosophy and talking in depth, if you will, about fundraising, is keep in mind, especially for board members who say, I don't like to ask people for money, and I rarely find anybody does raise their hand and say, I like to ask people for money, unless they're in a sales world and they're, the private sector. How many of you like to help people solve their problems?
Yeah.
So what you're talking about and asking donors to consider is, and remember that back to the marketplace and the skepticism, is make sure you're driving home a message about your credibility as an organization, how well run you are, how efficient you are. Be prepared to offer that kind of information. This goes full circle to your whole issue of transparency. And if another time we can talk about GuideStar. If you've not gone to guidestar.org and looked up your own organization, you need to go and claim your profile. Every nonprofit in the United States is listed. And we know we run into situations with donors who won't even consider giving to a nonprofit they've not heard of unless they've reached at least silver, if not gold or even platinum status on GuideStar. So it's about solving the donor's problem, because a major donor's biggest fear is, you're going to waste my money. So don't hesitate to make sure you have that information available. You don't want to necessarily lead with, but have available 3 years of 990s. Have available your GuideStar link when you go out to people. So short answer is, we'll have that video to you ASAP. A larger issue is talking about and thinking about it from a problem-solving point of view. And I know for most all of us on this call, we're not independently wealthy. Those who give away literally millions of dollars a year, they live in a world different than ours. But keep in mind, they didn't accumulate all that wealth, earn all that wealth by wasting it. And so the last thing they want to do is give it away to shady organizations. And there are a lot of them out there. That's why in Florida in particular, it's got some of the most stringent laws in the nation for people who do fundraising. So make sure you build credibility into your organization, look at GuideStar, and tout that information wherever possible, wherever appropriate, if nothing else on your website. So good luck in your ask. You've been at it 8 years, and this is the first time you've asked for money?
Well, not asked, but not, broadly asked. I've been donating a lot of it because I've been in the industry, music industry, a long time. So I've been supporting the industry a lot.
Gotcha. And as Oprah would say, you go, girl.
Thank you.
Tamara, yes, please.
Yes, thank you for this wonderful information. It's been amazing. I want to ask, sorry if it's silly, but Brittany, what is the main difference of a landing page? Because we have in our website a special page for donation with the donate button, but is a landing page a completely different thing?
Brittany.
Yeah, so, sorry. The purpose of a landing page is it usually has one main goal, the landing page, and then content on it is tailored towards a specific campaign that you're promoting. So this is what is a landing page for the year-end campaign with testimonials and copy and photos that are all related to that year-end campaign. And they're usually kind of like I'm trying not to get too confusing, but sometimes it can be like a whole website in one, where it's like they don't even have to go to your normal website. They can just go to the URL. So let's say www.myorganization.com/year-end-giving. That's the landing page. There might not be a menu, meaning that there's nowhere for me to go distracted and get distracted by the about you and like the other initiatives that you have going on every year. It's really a page with minimal distractions, one goal, content all catered toward that campaign. But again, you don't have to use landing pages. They can be very effective. Another way to think about landing pages is if you just search something in your Google browser. So like, let's say I search purple mattress and I click on the Google ads. Most of the people who are using Google ads are using landing pages. So if you're like still confused on what a landing page is, you can go to some of the e-commerce type sites and you'll see that it's like one page that's mostly a story about that one goal that they got you in to buy the mattress, condensed information. And that's what a landing page would be for you too. Condensed information, minimal distractions, one goal, year-end giving, year-end.
But it is, I mean, it can work if we, inside our website, we develop that very customized a landing page for donation with the testimonials
Yes.
and the videos. Perfect.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
again, you don't even have to use a landing page. You can just use your donation page, and then the content is inside the emails that you send, or the direct mail if you're sending some sort of like direct mail campaign in your Facebook posts. Either way, they're going to get content for the year-end campaign. It's just how many ways can we spread that content everywhere?
Gotcha.
Thank you.
All right, next question, please. Anyone, anything? What else can we respond to? What other questions might you have? There you go. Go for it. Your limit of
Sorry.
five questions each. So you've only used up one. You got room for 4 more. I'm just teasing. Go for it.
Sorry, but this is amazing. Any recommendation? We our organization OpenScene, it just has 2 years so far, but we've been producing a lot of cool things. So any recommendation to? I guess the most difficult part is to start to get that first donor, right? So if you can give us some light about it.
Ask me that one more time about getting started with donors.
Any recommendation to how to get that first donor?
Well, not knowing your.
Because I know
Go ahead.
a lot of people here, they're big organizations and they've been in the market for years. We only have 2 years. We're dealing, for example, with the Hispanic community is our main audience, but we want to create a bridge between people that want to learn about the Hispanic community but don't speak Spanish, and people that speak Spanish. So we have like that mix, and it's been difficult to like concentrate the efforts to get at least our first donor. So what do you recommend? Should we search into corporations, into institutions, into individuals? I don't know.
You kind of, yes, all of the above, but let me give you a couple answers. And frankly, Katie, you may have something you want to chime in as well, knowing the arts community in Brittany, but there's an old cliche about if you want to get advice, ask people for money. If you want to get money, ask people for advice. And so are there 3 to 5 to 7 to 12 people that are already in your organization, part of your organization, that know your organization, that support what you're doing, that you could gather together virtually, because it's easy to do via Zoom, and ask their advice? Here's our challenge. We're new in the community. We're trying to bridge between the Hispanic and the Anglo community, and we're needing to find new donors. What recommendations do you have? Send them a little survey in advance. Bring them together and let them become an advisory group to give you suggestions and ideas about where to find donors. If you have, second point, if you have anybody who's donated to you, to go to them specifically and say, gee, might I get 30 minutes of your time on the phone next Tuesday? Because we'd like to ask you a couple questions about why you gave and where we might find others with your same interest and your same motivation. So do an in-depth interview on 1 or 2 or 3 donors, even if it's somebody who's giving you $50. You know, it's a place to start. The third one to think about, and this is steal shamelessly, go to organizations that have some connection or relationship to your mission, even though they may be tangential, and look at their websites and look at their boards of directors. Okay, and begin to compile a list, stealing those names right off of those websites. Okay, begin to look for contacts and connections there. And then the fourth one, we just did this for a homeless organization in Charlotte, North Carolina. We really like infousa.com, and there are 210, 220 million households in infousa.com's database. And they sell those lists very inexpensively. We've got 552 names based on net worth, annual income, giving patterns, downloaded Excel spreadsheets sent right to the client in Charlotte, including a complimentary set of mailing labels for $149.
What?
So if you go to infousa.com and you can just click without any cost, build a list, and then begin to put in your criteria. We just want people in Kissimmee, or we want people within a 30-mile radius of this zip code in Central Florida or whatever. We want them with this income level, and you can delimit it to get it down to a sizable number, if you will, and then buy the list. These are brand new people, know nothing about you, but back to Brittany's expertise, it's a great opportunity to, let's just say for easy math, we buy a list of 300 names and mailing addresses, and we have 3 different letters with 3 different messages about 3 different aspects of us, and we send those out. So getting blind mailing list is a place to start as well. And again, it's infousa.com. I have no proprietary interest in them. They're just very friendly in working with the nonprofit market and very inexpensive services. And they literally, within an hour of the credit card charge, you get an Excel spreadsheet with a wealth of information about those individuals who live right there in your neighborhood.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, we got about 2 more minutes. Somebody else? Anybody else?
Mary
I want to mention that if you are buying a list, that's where it's important to really mention the impacts in the community that your organization is making. And if you're a 2-year organization and you don't have a lot of like statistical proof, then speak to the impact that you plan on making, or that the people that you're going to be helping, but directly in that community, because again, it kind of helps with that cold calling approach of what lists are. So just tie it back to the community that they're living in.
Great, thank you. Well, on that note, at least to honor the time commitment, again, we still have most of folks still here. That's great. Katie, hopefully we met your expectations. This is always an honor and an opportunity for Brittany and I both. We're just delighted to have a chance to get in front of the audience here. And as we said all along in the marketing, yeah, it's November 6th, but it's certainly not too late to do your campaign planning for your year-end appeal. And frankly, you kind of get that urgency anyway. It's like, oh my goodness, we've got this deadline. Keep in mind, year-end tax deductions is not why people give to you, it's simply when they give to you. They need to have fallen in love with your mission along the way. But as Brittany pointed out, literally between Christmas and New Year, it's not inappropriate to send an email every day because people are going, oh, this is year-end business I need to take care of. And they stroke you that check that they need to get out. 10% of all dollars given in the last 3 days of the calendar year. And that's just around the corner. So on that note, Katie, it's all yours. Bring us across the finish line, please. You all be well, be safe. We'll get you the link to the video ASAP. And remember, we have a whole slide set available as a PDF. If you didn't already get that, Katie would have that to distribute to you. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you so much. I think I speak for everyone, John and Brittany, when I just say this. These continue to be so helpful. I think there's a takeaway for everyone, no matter what size organization you are. So I just wanted to say thank you so much. To everyone on this call, I will be sending out the video and I will send out the study guide as well again whenever I receive that from John. So be on the lookout for that. And as always, if you have any feedback or thoughts about these workshops, please feel free to send it to me. I know you received my email, so just respond to that email if you would like to say anything about these workshops. We love providing them for you. We get a lot of feedback from them. So we'll keep bringing them to you if you keep wanting them. So thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate you, and best of luck, best fundraising towards the end of the year.
Yeah, keep your mask on.
Yes, thank you. Have a great weekend.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.